Good morning.
Good morning, yes, good morning to everybody, and apologies for the late start. So, my brain went on autopilot last night when I was scheduling the live stream, and I scheduled it for 8:20 instead of 8 o'clock. So, oh, that's somebody in Clubhouse saying, and that's somebody you can guess who.
Who that is? Could it be Robert Wagner? Maybe.
No, that's Timothy Langley.
Oh, Timothy,
Yeah.
I would mix those two up. Never seen them in the same room ever. So, no, it could be the same.
Okay, right. So it's a pleasure to have you with us. Good morning. Thanks very much for joining us, even though we're 5 minutes late. Today we have Julie Boo with us. She's French and she has that very dark sense of humor, which I hope we're going to have a chance to enjoy today. And also, we met Julie several weeks ago, actually, through the introduction of Ozan, whose name I have difficulty pronouncing still. So, Ozan, if you're watching us, please forgive me for this. But I think that the larger community here in Tokyo and Japan already know you. And we talked with Julie, and Julie has been here for a while. And well, what we are going to talk about today is finding, actually discovering your path in Japan. And well, we have talked with some of you who are listening to us. Oh, could you please stop that? Yeah. Yes.
You can have both on.
Okay.
She loves Clubhouse so much that she likes to keep it on. But
Yes, exactly. But the thing is that we all come to Japan and we have
Yuka,
seen,
Yuka, can you please keep your mic down?
yes, that's
Thank
yes.
you.
All right, thank you. We all go through different experiences after coming to this beautiful country, and some of the experiences are actually quite challenging, depending on where we live, whom we meet, and some of the experiences are actually very good, but all of them are life changing, and they help us grow and they help us find probably the better versions of ourselves. So today we're going to hear Julie's story here in Japan, and I believe that we're going to learn quite a few things from Julie as well. So, okay, yes.
slide Julie to the middle so I don't have to stare at my own mug, please.
Uh,
There you go. Okay.
so, Julie, I'm giving you the floor, and also I'm giving you the screen. The whole screen will be yours, so that we can hear what your story here is. And after that, we'll come back on screen and actually talk with you and share some of have questions and some of our experiences as well. So here we go. It's the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me here, by the way. And please, everyone, forget if my words sometimes are a little bit, like not as what you expected, because it's 8 a.m. I don't know for you, but I'm a French influencer and freelancer, so 8 a.m. is a very early time for me. I am going to present a little bit who I am, what I've been, what brought me to Japan, and a little bit of what brought me to build my own brand, Secret d'Artisan Japonais, which literally translates to Secrets of Japanese Craftsmen. And I'm going to try to be thorough with that, because I work as a guide and as a speaker, so talking is literally, my strong point, which is also a very wrong one when you talk too much and people are bored. Anyway, nice to meet you, everyone. My name is Julie. I am non-binary, but you can use pretty much any pronouns that you feel is relevant for me. Anything is fine. I come from Bordeaux, southwest France, and I have started learning Japanese when I was, I think, 10 or 13, something around then, when there was a very big manga and anime wave arriving in France. And all my friends were kind of into this. And I just asked my mother, yes, can I learn Japanese? She said yes, to my own surprise, actually. I just started this way, and then I continue on my study, always taking Japanese as an option. because I was following, like night courses, or at least like there was a Japanese uh, culture center in Bordeaux where I live, and I used to go there once a week, and then I just continued this way throughout other studies until I reached high school. So Japanese was never my major; it was always an option, and I was pursuing other dreams along with that one. And one of them was to be a craftsman, and I decided to study bookbinding, which I did for 3 years after my A level. I did a sandwich training in a vocational training class for 3 years, and I graduated from this as a bookbinder with like an official French government bookbinding arts and crafts degree. During those studies, I worked hard to find an internship in Japan. This was my first trip to Japan. I was 20, and I by connections with my teachers and so on, I found a training at the Tokyo National Library in the restoration and bookbinding department when I learned so much. But I also discovered other craftsmen there, and it also encouraged me in my now at that time growing dream to live in Japan. I was always someone who spoke a lot, very feminist, very bright, cheerful. Some people in Japan would say urusai, which means you make a lot of noise. And so a lot of my family were very afraid that the Japanese work culture would not suit me, and that living in Japan would be very conflicting for me. So I decided to try on. I really wanted to live in Japan, but I was really not sure it was going to work. So I am lucky enough, being French, to have the working holiday visa available. So when I was 22, I decided to come to Japan, and at that time, again by some various connection that I could make during those years, I found a training, and it was in Nagoya, and it was in a bookbinding factory. So very far from the very high end bookbinding that I've been studying, but at least it was somewhere to start with. I worked there for 3 months. It didn't really make it for me, so I decided to go and do something else for the remaining 9 months that I had. I went through various jobs. I would say gaijin, a foreigner's job in Japan. I worked in a French bakery. I worked at a French restaurant. I worked as an English teacher for kids. I worked as an English conventional teacher for adults, and so on and so on. I did pretty much everything I could find. After that, I unfortunately couldn't find a job to stay there because I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Japanese visa obtention system, but you need to have at least a high school degree or an engineer degree or a degree that is related to the field you're willing to work with or the company that is willing to employ you to get a working visa, which was not my case because I was not working in the bookbinding. I also didn't had 10 years of experience at uni to get the specialist visa. I was 22. Um, and like it just didn't work. So I came back to France, entered university, and I graduated in tourism and international project management because I thought, okay, with this in my pocket, I'll pretty much find any job, and any job will suit what I studied as a foreigner, and anything will fit, what I've studied. And it worked. I chose the third year because I knew there was an exchange with Japan, and I remember on the first day of class telling everyone, like, I'm here for the Japan exchange program, and you better know that if any of you is expecting to go to Japan and there's only one seat, you're gonna lose. I was such a brat. But I eventually got the seat, and I went to Japan. Then one of my friends, after I graduated from university, found me a job in Nagoya, and it was working in a hotel and a cafe as a chef because I had some previous experience in cooking, but also the title of my visa was specialist in humanities and international job, which means that my job at the cafe guest house was coordinator of international event. It was such a lousy title for me, basically being in the kitchen and chatting in every language I know with all the clients all day. Um, I spent 2 years there, and it was fantastic because I made a lot of connection that I still use and love today. But after 2 years, I just asked myself, did I really came to Japan to cook in a cafe? The food was good, the events were great, but there was no much of, like development. And not that I had a real career path in mind, because my dream was to go to Japan. And I started to have this identity crisis of, okay, I'm in Japan, but I'm working like a dog, and I don't really get to have fun, and I need some more challenge, and I want to learn more about the Japanese culture and so on. So I decided to leave my job, and I entered in a company that was doing public relationship. And this is where I experienced the real Japanese company. It was a Japanese with 1,000 employees at the time, and I was in a very teeny tiny room with a woman boss, which nowadays look a lot. When I think about it, it was a look like Prada's devil. She was a self-made woman. She raised her both daughters while having her own company. She was very strong and very protective of me. And at that time in Japan, I was starting to feel quite lonely. My romantic relationship does not really go that much, and I had in front of me a woman that I really truly admire, and she basically took me in as her trainee and tried to teach me everything she knew. But I was not strong enough at that time to take those teachings and being able to say no when it was too much. And we had this very it turns out to be a little bit toxic relationship, because I kind of use her as a replacing mother. We would go out, on Saturday and Sunday. She would show me around. We would have dinner many times. I knew her husband. Her two daughters are still very good friends to me. It was good at the first, but when the work, started to be too much, I also couldn't say no because she was still my boss. Um, you can always say no, or like just, leave me alone to your mother. You certainly cannot say that to your boss, especially when your visa depends on it. And this is when, after 1 year and a half or 2 years, I had my very first big burnout in Japan. And I had to stop working at that company. And I had to stop working for around 6 months. I obviously went to the mental clinic. I was lucky enough to that my Japanese level was enough to go and talk to a therapist. But it was a very difficult time because that was at the beginning of the corona, and so I was not able to see my family. I could not leave Japan, otherwise I could not go back. And in my case, I had two cats, so I could not leave them in Japan forever. It was very difficult to travel with pets. So it was a very, very difficult era for me trying to find out what I was doing in Japan, and are all my problem like culturally related, or is it a me problem, kind of like where am I French, where am I Japanese? At that point I was 27, and I had been learning Japanese for 15 years, which was, you know, pretty much half of my life. So even though I had been in Japan for only 5 years, in the way my brain is constructed, I was kind of like bicultural already. And my that's also what my therapist said. It was not the cultural problem; it was a me problem, because I basically understand what's going on around me. But still, I had to go back to work because of Corona situation and because of visa situation. I had to renew. I was on that year. It was 2020. I had to renew my visa, and so I had to had a company. Otherwise, I would lose everything. So I entered in a tourism related company, which was in the field that I studied in France. That recruited me, headhunted me, and I started working. It was a company based in Tokyo, Japanese company again, with around 50 employee. And I was working for them as a consultant, as a tourism development consultant. So exactly on my field of expertise. But the boss, I negotiated very hard, and the boss really truly believed that the corona was not going to stay that long, and it was very long in Japan. We had 3 years of thing being not normal. I know that it resumed a lot more quickly in other countries, but in Japan it was quite complicated and quite long. And the problem towards foreigner really raised a lot of racism, and it was even complicated. To one point, it was complicated for me to leave my house because I live in a remote area of Japan and in Nagoya, not in Nagoya, but a remote area from Nagoya, and I'm basically the only white foreigner in the whole neighborhood. And I know for sure from the embassy that I'm the very one only one French person in the whole city, which is a very white one, by the way. Anyway, so it was complicated, and the corona continuing, my boss could not afford to pay me anymore because he didn't have enough work for me. But at the same time, I told him, no way, I'm going to quit. Every friend that I knew at that time that was working in tourism industry were either lose their job or were struggling with their uh, job or like with their freelance activities. So I knew that I had to, stick on that job because Japanese working system is made so that it's very complicated to fire an employee if they didn't do anything wrong. But it was like a fight of who would stay, like, be the strongest. And my boss, that is usually a good person, was trying to get me away, and I understand this, but I didn't want to. Uh, and there was no other branch that I could hang up to, so I had not much choice. And this is when I did the second burnout, but it was much more of a bore out because I had less and less job to do, but I was still required to stay in front of my screen at home. So it was complicated. And I had this idea from a while on how I wanted to do my job, and realizing how I like to talk to people, and how, because of my craftsmanship studies, I had this understanding of Japanese traditional culture. And I was already going to meet craftsmen on my free time. And each time I had, sorry, is that the time all right?
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
good.
Go.
So each time I had some times, or if I had some friends over, I would be super happy to take them to the craftsman workshops that I knew and talk about it. And many people told me that I was good explaining things and, vulgarizing. I don't know if it's a word that we use in English, that's a French word, but, make it simple so anybody could understand what the craftsman was talking about. And because I had also this experience as a vocational training to do so many sandwich trainings and an internship at different craftsman shop, I had an understanding that I found out was not, average, was more than average of what it is to be a craftsman, what drives them to be craftsmen, and what are the pros and cons of being a craftsman in a Japanese society. And also because I had experienced what it is to be a salaryman, an office lady, whatever you mean now, an office person. I kind of understand both sides of the spectrum, and it turns out like it was working great. And I was sensing that there was in Japanese markets the need for more in-depth tourism. A lot of people were asking on forums, and Japanese forums on Facebook, on Reddit, like how can I make an experience? How can I make my time in Japan a little bit more meaningful than just doing Tokyo, Kyoto, Golden Route, and so on. And by historical design, Nagoya and Aichi Prefecture has one of the biggest concentration of craftsmen and different craftsmanship in Japan. And whether it is for pottery or metalwork or woodwork or Buddhist related crafts, there's so many things that makes it very special regardless of other nearby Kyoto or Osaka. And I really felt strongly that if Aichi had one point that she could that nobody else could compete with, was the variety of the crafts. And it's very well placed in Japan. So slowly in my mind I thought, okay, I've been training so many guides and I've been helping creating so many tours, but most of the time I was not satisfied with the level of the guide, whether it was their level of Japanese, but most of the time their level of storytelling. And I was always thinking, I would do this and I would do that. And at some point I was like, okay, you're just being so mean to them. just try and do it yourself. Maybe there's something you don't know, and maybe there's a reason why they can't do it the way you want it to be. And at that time, I was already with my now husband, but at that time boyfriend for 2 years. We've been living together for a year and a half, and we were already engaged. But I wanted to have my uh, permanent visa before I marry him, because I had a very high pride on I am in Japan because I'm worth it and not just because I married someone. But at that time, I was entering a second phase of my bore-out at my company, and this was turning into a depression. And I was still going to the therapist, but things were not going any better. And so my boyfriend at the time told me, okay, I think you've proven everyone that you were able to work in Japan. You've been there for 5 years on your own. You've been working in different companies. Now the situation is such that you cannot be free if you don't have either the permanent residency visa or the spouse visa, the dependent of Japanese national visa. So it's a nonsense to not get married now. Just it's not like we just met. It's not like you're in a dead end situation. We know you can do it, but if we can make it easier, that will be better for everyone, right? I said yes. Quit my job at this toxic company. I also went to see my family. It was 2 years in Corona, so it was in 2022. The frontiers had just reopened, and I knew I could go safely to France and then come back after. We got married, and then 15 days later, I started up my own, what is called a kojinjigyo here, so a solopreneur type of like freelance stuff. So it's not a company technically, but I mean, I was free to do whatever I pleased. And that's what I found so unfair. I've been learning Japanese for so many years, wanting, trying, doing my best to work in Japan. And at the end, the only way I could get free was to get a visa. And once you get this merit visa, nobody care. Really, literally nobody care what you're doing of your life in Japan. Like, they don't care anymore how much you get money. Do you get money or not? How do you get money? Like, is it an OnlyFans, or is it like a job that is encouraging the Japanese culture? Like, nobody cares anymore, and that's something that I really didn't like. But at some point, it also saved me mentally, because suddenly I was in charge of everything. Um, and I obviously made a kind of business plan of where I wanted to be in 1 year, what type of growth I wanted to have, and so on. And turns out I reached my 3 year plan at the end of the first year of exercise. And I am still the first one to be surprised, not because it's working. Otherwise, I wouldn't have started if I didn't thought it could be working. But it's also pleasing and surprising, and can I really believe my eyes? What's happening right now? Kind of situation. But yes, turns out my concept really clicked with the public. And so, Secret d'Artisan Japonais concept is each time I receive a demand, I will go through the lengths of calling different craftsmen that could um, go with the demand of the client, and then I will build a whole full private tailor-made day around this demand. Let's say someone wants to experience pottery. I have, for example, two options, and one of them will be to go to Tokoname City, which is down Nagoya. But I don't see the point of just taking the clients to the craftsman shop, do the experience, and then leave them there. It doesn't make sense to me. I used to be a role-playing game player, so if there's any D&D fans here, they will understand me. But I also used to be a master, and I know I mean, and a player, and the difference between someone that's good at telling stories and a master that's just not good at that, it really makes the experience very different. And so for me, being a guide is about telling a story. So there's a beginning, there's a middle, and then there's an end. And the idea is that the client gets a whole comprehension of the area and why this craft is here, and what's the story of that craftsman, who he is as a person. And then comes the activity that's just the bonus to understand, the key to understand better the whole day of experience. Um, and that's obviously because of all the works that it is and all the depths that we can go to, addressed to the high-end market. But I also knew this market existed because I worked in different um, travel agencies that kind of dealt with those clients, but also same, I was not satisfied on how they dealt with that clientele, and I thought I could do better. So, and at some point I was like, okay, you're so, you, maybe I'm bragging, and maybe I thought, I mean, maybe they don't do it because there's a reason and you just don't see it because you're stupid, so just try. um and now I understand that some people are just not willing to put in the extra efforts that it takes to go a little bit further, and I am willing to take it. And my clue is just to find, to find the clients that are matching the level of energy that I have. And I think I've kind of found this target. I have been contacted by a few individual real travel agencies that are targeting high-end individual travelers, and they're very happy of my services. And I have also, thanks to my community on different SNS, which is a small one but very effective, a lot of big word of mouth that is bringing me like happy clients bring me next happy clients kind of scheme, and it works very good to the point that this year I am finally investing money in branding. So I have a designer right now that is creating me a logo, because after 2 years of exercise, my expectation at the beginning of the business changed, and now I face the reality, and I thought I'm not going to invest from the beginning in a logo or in a graphic chart for my website if I don't really know what I'm doing. So after 2 years, I have a better grasp. So that's what's going to, from this year, getting a new website, getting more aligned to where my real clientele is, and also creating content that fits the demand and the needs of that clientele. But yes, whenever I'm out talking with the craftsmen, translating, interpreting for our clients, see the smile on their face, see that they, feel that they had a private connection time with the craftsman, as if they talked to this person, one on one without me translating. And if they also buy more at the shop at the end, this is how I know that my work was successful. And so finally, right now, I feel like I am in the right place in the world. And everything I went to just had a meaning. There are probably a lot of, things on the way. These things are coming because life is never safe. But now I feel a lot stronger, and I feel, like I'm working in my genius. I don't know, like my field of expertise, my genius spot. Is that something you said in English? But yes, this is where I am now.
Yeah. Well, Julie, that's a great story. And while I was listening to you, I was thinking once again that dots connect backwards. And the way you went through all the ups and downs, well, the burnouts and bore outs, and also the period of depression as well. So finally, they all of those experiences, they have helped you grow.
Yeah.
And, right? Because they haven't actually destroyed you. That's right.
I was pretty much destroyed at some point.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was made of kintsugi, I'd probably be, C3PO from Star Wars, the stuff that is all shiny. But now I'm shiny.
Yeah. No, I understand. I think we've all been to a point in our life where we get burnout, right?
Yeah.
We all deal with it differently. We all have different makeups and, different situations. But my question to you is, because this is something that I didn't struggle with, but I had to figure out was like an internal early warning system that burnout was coming. You know, maybe I wasn't there yet, but I saw, and not the first couple times, but eventually I saw the signs, and I think I kind of automated my response by telling myself, as soon as this workplace gets either toxic or I can't learn anything from it, like when I've reached my limit of what I can get from it, then I was always, okay, it's time to move on. And so I was always looking at almost
Yeah.
every stop as temporary, but I got better at gauging when do I make my move. I'm not. So have you developed that through your experiences a little bit now? Do you think you got a better handle on it?
I think there's something cultural about that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tim. You come from America, from the US,
Yeah.
somehow. And I think in terms of, like, okay, it's not my place anymore. You from the US, people from the US are a lot easier to recognize that it's not their time and they just need to move on. I was raised in a traditional family in the sense that you get one job, you stay there, and as long as you can have time, for your hobbies outside of work, that's all that matters. And I'm also the eldest of my siblings, and I have a little sister that is the trouble. And trust me, she is even
Of course.
brighter than I am. She
The
shines
trouble.
even brighter, and she's even more noisier than I am, and I love her so much. But I always had, to suck it in, and I was the one in, you want something, just get it. And at some point, my biggest fear was to lose my visa. I always had that fear, so
Yeah.
quitting a job for a work-related visa in Japan can have very big consequences, especially when your abilities are not that. I mean, not abilities, but just qualifications are not mainstream. Because finding a job can be tough, and we went through this whole Corona phase where you can really didn't have the choice. It was like, walk and keep going straight and or die. And at some point, also, my dream was to live in Japan and find my purpose in Japan. But I realized my biggest strength. It took me around 10 years from the moment I start thinking, oh, but maybe I would like to to expatriate to Japan, and the moment I actually got my visa and started living here. So that was my drive for 10 years. And it took me the next 5 years to find the next dream. So
Yeah.
it was at this point of my life where I was, I needed to be focused, but as I also didn't really know where to go. There was this visa. I don't know if you say it in English, but the Damocles swords. It's just in like in the top of your head, and any
Yeah.
miss, and
Yeah.
then
Right.
it's
Right.
out. It's
Yeah.
finished, right?
Yeah.
So that was this pressure as well, and also I was here alone. I
Mm.
didn't have a partner. I didn't have family.
Yeah.
And I also had one Japanese family who I was very close to that decided, for a reason I never know, I never knew, and even now I don't know, to close their door on me
Oh.
for, like, from the day to the other. They were treating me like their daughter, like telling me, you're gonna take after us on our company and so on, like very, very, and that someday they just disappeared completely, and I have still today no clue of what I did wrong. I tried obviously everything I could to, get to an answer, or just at least tell me what was wrong. But Japanese people, it's never gonna happen. So I
Uh,
had like a lot of trauma of being abandoned, and I was actually alone. And after 5 years living in Japan, even if I've had a few friends, like me, that it's not that easy to ask services or to ask for help to Japanese people, because they don't really know how to react. And what I learned is that help is not always where you expect it.
Mm.
And I found that when I was in the deepest places, that the friends that were around and were doing groceries for me were people I didn't expect would do it, and the people that I was expecting them to do it were just not there. So I think For me, I didn't really feel the burnout coming in because I was in the survival mode for so long already.
Yeah.
Being alone in Japan and trying to find my place, and just trying to rent a place, being alone with two cats and a motorcycle, and being a foreigner,
Yeah.
and being also, noisy and like everything. It was like a whole package of thing. But at the same time, I just didn't want to lose. So I think I started the burnout just before I left the bar. But then I was in a new environment, learning new skills, learning how to adapt to a Japanese company, and I was excited about that. So I just gave everything that I had because that's everything I had. And I'm also the type of gambaru, like people when I decide to do something, I just do it. If you give me some purpose, I'll go for it. And so I think I just didn't knew my limits because I haven't reached them until that time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
Right.
the first time in
I
my
agree.
life I
See,
reached my
Gambari
limit.
people tend to burn out because I don't usually go to that level. I stop
Yes,
before reaching to Gambari
yeah.
level. Then that's why
And
I'm. Yeah, I was just asking myself, have I ever burnt out? I said,
Oh, that's a good
so
question.
what
hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, how I describe it is
Yeah.
that a lot of, I mean, as long as you haven't experienced the burnout and you're able to respect your limits, I think maybe I mean, everybody, yes, has been close to burnout. The
Hmm.
problem is recognizing, like, not being able to say no. And I would say this, some people told me that, you read a lot of things online and some people are just bad people. But anyway, that people who burn out are basically people who are not strong enough, and I would say that's
Mhm.
actually the opposite.
I agree.
Burnout is
Yeah.
basically, let's say you have an athlete that participating in the Olympic Games, and training or like working or like doing the competition, they just break a muscle. Would you say that this is because they were weak? No, it's because they exceeded the capacity of their body by asking too much of it.
Yeah.
Mhm. Right.
And that's actually the complete opposite. They are too strong. Their will is too strong for the limit, the physical limit of their body.
I
That's
think that.
it. I
Yeah.
I
That's,
remember in September 2019, I did something like 100 overwork, and only 20 hours were paid. But at the same time, my
100 hours
whole
of overtime?
company,
Wow. Okay.
yes,
Hmm.
which is
That's
3 more weeks of work in a month.
right. Yeah.
That's long. That's
Right.
long.
And I didn't do it because I wanted to. I did do it because my company was facing a hard time. There was not enough people
Hmm.
working, and I knew why I was doing it, and I was very happy to do so at the moment because it was very helpful to my company, and because I knew where I wanted to go, and I wanted to respect the deadlines that we had and stuff, and I wanted to prove to my boss that she could count on me,
yeah.
Hmm.
No.
and
Yeah.
I didn't want,
It's
right?
yes, it's
We
about people.
feel. I
Hmm.
think those of us who come to Japan, we want to prove to them that we're not fulfilling some stereotype as not being hard
Yes.
workers, and so
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
double down
Hmm.
out of pride. But here's the other thing: if I feel genuinely appreciated from the people around me and the company, then I, like you, Julie, I don't mind working really hard, or I didn't. Now I do. I'm old, but back then, and a lot of it has to do with whether you're feeling the love and the appreciation for your efforts because you want to do it for your team. And
Yeah.
I also believe the hard part about Japan is the implied peer pressure. It's not vocalized,
Hmm.
but I always knew that if I didn't pull my load, then that part of the load that I didn't pull was going to be distributed to my teammates. And how can you face your teammates in the morning if they all took on part of your burden? That's what was going through my head mentally.
And
So
they don't tell you that, right? They're just all silent. Yeah.
you know it.
Like
You know,
something in the air.
Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
It's feel that.
Actually, in in the office that I was working in, all the workers were part-time workers, so
Ah,
their overtime was paid. I was the only one with the say shine stuff.
okay.
The
Gotcha.
thing is, on my side, is I have, as I told you before, I have been raised by a family that was like very not strict, but at least, like you need to do this, and that. And my mother was very afraid I would turn to a spoiled child if he was spoiling me with this compliment. So I didn't have much compliment, and it was everything I was doing. It was like, okay, does it makes you happy? Are you happy of you doing this? And what I think doesn't matter. That was my mother was saying to me. So I didn't get so much. I didn't had so much compliments. I had to judge all by myself if what I was doing was good. This is what people call, like the child, like what, like positive parenting.
Mm.
But the thing is, it was maybe to a one point, it was like I didn't get enough compliments. And my boss and my colleague and people around me were literally treating me like a unicorn. Like, oh my God, you're so incredible. Your Japanese is incredible. Your English is incredible. You're thinking so fast and so ever and whatsoever. And so I was constantly under like a shower of glitter
Praise.
and how beautiful you are now, and blah 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 blah, something that was the first time happening in my life. So I didn't see that that was also very bad because I didn't believe them.
Mm.
And so
Mm.
I didn't realize that I was already moving mountains, and I already was doing so much. I always thought it was not enough. I always thought that I could do better. And I didn't really believe people around me. And also, I did not know how to stop. And I had this false belief, which is very Japanese in a way, that the company is going to take care of you and they're going to take the
I didn't
decision,
realize.
and that a good manager is going to see if you have too much workload, and they're going to monitor your hours and stuff, which is not the case. I mean, in school they do. In school they know how much you have to do. You have your records, like you have like they take care of you because you're a child. But in a work environment, and I think that's a generational problem, in school, I mean, from when I was in school, so 10 or 15 years ago, we were raised to fulfill the notebook and to get the good marks and to get the appraisal whatsoever. But when you start going in the workplace, I mean, doing your job right is just the basics. That's what you're paid for, and you
Mhm.
won't get any appraisal for that.
So Julie, I'm sorry. I was just raising my hand because can you see? Because this is Japanese, the education. You have to raise your hand. And
I
again,
couldn't see you. Sorry, I couldn't
no,
see
no, no,
you,
I'm just
Yuka.
kidding.
You
I'm
were
just
not on my
kidding.
screen.
Oh,
Okay.
oh, I kid all the time, and my sense of humor is sometimes so off. So yes, don't mind me. Anyway, I have to. So I'm dying to ask. I was just looking at your website. It's beautifully done, and I
Thank you.
love your kimono. It's in obi. The way that you are sort of wearing obi is so creative. And then I don't know who dressed you, but that was beautiful. You might have
Me.
done it yourself. You did?
Yeah. I'm wearing
Good
kimono
for
on
you.
a
You're more Japanese
regular
than I
basis.
am. And my question is, so the craftsmanship. You said that you are involved with this, from the beginning. But
Yes.
to me, the craftsmanship and the craftsman, like the monozukuri in Japan,
Yes.
it's really sort of jibe very well with the Japanese culture and
Yes.
Yes.
so Japanese history. So the success of your business is that because of you just have chosen nature of your service and this craftsmanship, the artisanship.
Yes. Yes. There's two things. First of all, let's say three. Um, First of all, I am specialized in craftsmanship because I had studies for 3 years in craftsmanship, and the good thing with bookbinding is that it touches pretty much every zydio, every thing you can find on the market, whether it is paper or leather, of metalworks, of thread. There's pretty much everything involved in bookbinding. So I had to study a lot of different materials in
Okay.
order to do so. So I'm able to talk about things, and because I studied it so in depth for 3 years, I kind of understand things very quickly when I see them. I understand how it works. I see the craftsman doing this ton ton ton, and I understand exactly how like how strong he has to do it and why he does this way. And most of the time, they don't really have to explain to me. I watch, I see, and I kind of understand. And that makes me able to explain to my clients in the way that when they're doing the activity, I can explain them in depth with the craftsmen, explaining them, I can also even go further and give them the exact gesture, or like I can hear as well. So it breaks the language barrier. The second thing is on the customer side, a lot of people, Japanese craftsmanship is well known all abroad for being very high quality,
Mhm.
has this sense of detail, has this sense of like, ethic that is so specific to Japanese culture, but that's also actually very specific to French craftsmanship culture. So the results in terms of visuals are different, but the idea behind being a master of the craft and the degree of details where you can go into is actually quite similar from French and Japanese craftsmanship. So clients know that Japanese craftsmanship is incredible and exceptional, and they want to have a chance to experience it. And also, some of them wants, it's just not doing like a taiken, like an experience for 30 minutes in the cultural center. Some people want to see the workshop, they want to see where the actual magic happened, and they want to have a chance to talk one-on-one of the on the craftsman. So that's something I can do for them. And the last part is the craftsmen themselves are willing to find new clients. They, and some of them are in dire need of like extending their clientele or find new ways to sell their arts and crafts, because the original object that they were producing is not in need in Japan anymore.
Yeah.
And because I have this creative mind as well, I have been working with many craftsmen. And sometimes, let's say, okay, I have an example for you. I have a lacquer, a guy that do lacquerware for Buddhist craftsmanship, and he's situated in Inuyama. He's a lovely man. He's in his 70s, and his son is taking after him. And first time I came to see him, he showed me an experience for making chopsticks, right? That's an experience you can find pretty much everywhere in Japan. When talking about lacquerware, people either like a bowl or chopsticks. And sorry, it's boring. Why would someone pay 6 or 7 thousand yen to do this experience in the workshop with that craftsman when you can find the same at 3,000 yen in Akasakusa, or like in the place that's so easy reachable? It doesn't make sense. I'm not going to be able to convince the clients to choose that one instead of like a very simple one. So I just spent time with that guy, like we talked, we became friends. And at some point I was just telling you, okay, what is some, if it was not a matter of price, if you had 100 person work like waiting in front of it, what do you want to do? What would you like to show? Is there any crazy project that you have somewhere hidden that you haven't shown me? I saw his gaze lighten,
Mm.
and he had this sparkle inside, and he just went at the corner of the workshop and came back with a masu. So for those who don't know, a masu is a small square cup that was historically used to
Drink sake?
weight rice,
Oh, wait,
and
rice.
now
Oh.
is used, a bit like historically now it's used to drink sake.
Mm.
um and he was making one with some shellfish shells on the side, and some shark skin on another side, and with the lacquer it just looked shiny like a starry sky in the night. And it was just one of the most beautiful objects I ever seen. And I was like, yes, okay, tell me more about that.
Mm.
And then we started this creating process of what we could do. Now the experience is like 29,000 yen for a half full day with the craftsman, and we are making those shark skin masu. And each time I go to the shop, this guy, I mean, it's not a shop, it's a workshop. Each time I go and just see him, just pass to say hi on my way to going somewhere else, he comes up with another incredible idea. He's done like a lot of different objects since then, a lot of like very creative, very modern ways of using traditional techniques to objects that could be used in everyday life. And he's so excited about this. Each time I go there, he's just taking things out, and it's like, what do you think of this, and what do you think of that? And he's like so excited. And he told me, okay, if you hadn't tell me that there was the need for
I
this, and it was okay, and it was okay to go out of this traditional stuff, I would have never started. And he's not the only one who told me this.
No,
Actually,
I
I
saw
have a
this
lot of
master.
other
That's
craftsmen.
beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. So yeah, I think, we don't have so much time, but what I like to do is I like to offer opportunities to craftsmen.
Mhm.
So my expertise in craftsmanship in French and English, because I was also doing training in England, as well as the clients need to go out of their of beaten paths, and some people wanted to put money to discover something more in depth. And the craftsmen need to find a new clientele and to try new things without the pressure of Japanese people saying, no, it's not traditional, you can't do it. It's just like a very good association that works. And my studies in marketing made me able to put this in a maybe more appealing way, and being able to sell this
Right.
experience.
Yes. I like it because to me, what at the end of the day, and the the core of what you do is connecting people,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And because all your studies, all your experience, all your upbringing, actually, they have led all together to this point of time. But
Yeah.
also, connecting people is such an important thing because you
It's,
create opportunities for them, right?
yes.
And you help them meet and you help them find the next thing they want to do and they're passionate about.
Yeah.
I think that this is very important, and we need more people like you actually
Yeah.
who can do that.
Sure.
Thank
Right.
you. Not
Yes,
too much. I'm gonna lose my job. I'm gatekeeping here.
I think I think that there aren't
But no,
many
yes. I mean,
who can
I
do
mean,
it.
I'm
Yeah,
I'm only working in central Japan, right? And there's the need of people like me everywhere in the country.
Yeah,
So as
especially
long as
northern
you're not
Japan. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
working in Aichi, it's fine. I can help you.
yeah,
We
because
need
that
people who connect people.
yes,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you also have that skill. You have not only the knowledge, but you have the skill of doing that. And I would say that not many people are so skillful in
Looks
act,
so.
right? Yes, and there are some, but they are still a minority, here. So I think, yeah, it's really wonderful what you're doing, and I'm so glad that you agreed to be our guest speaker.
I'm
Yes.
Thank you
glad you're
so
in a good
much.
place now. And
Yes.
Yeah,
I
but
love your love passion.
you found your place. And it underscores there are an infinite number of paths to find
Yes.
meaning
And
wherever
it
you.
might change.
It's
yeah,
right. It's based on your authentic self. That's why, since we're all different, we
Mm.
Yeah.
all have to make our own path. And I've harped on this before, but I went through a phase where I got too Japanese in a creepy
Oh yeah,
way.
I had to. Come
I
on.
was creeping people out, even including myself sometimes. And it took a trip back to America to say, "Oh my God, I've been too Japanized," and I had to find I've come to call it my cross cultural sweet spot, where I
Yeah.
come from an authentic place, but I make adjustments to do well in Japan, but kind of on my own terms. Within
You
reason.
need to know the basics to be able to bend it. That's the base of
Great tool.
craftsmanship.
Yeah.
And so being too, in French we have a word for that. We call this being tatamized from the tatami. Um,
Yeah.
okay.
and I mean, I think any expat person in any country, someone that has the will to go in depth in the culture, needs to go to that phase where you are
Right.
even more than the
Yeah,
people there. Because if you don't go in depth for this, you won't be able to go back and then choose the balance. It's that first of all, you arrive with nothing, then you need to be, tempering. At some point, the
Just
new culture takes
calibrate.
more space,
Yeah.
and when you reach the bottom of this and say, okay, I can't take anymore, then you go back and find a balance. And that's all about knowing but choosing not to do. It's like, I know you should not walk and eat in the streets, but I love eating my sandwich while having a sample, like a stroll, right?
I do
And
too.
so the guide that's the gaijin card, right? It's like, it's where but it means that it means that when you need to be in line and when you need to respect the rule, you're able to, because you had this phase where you were so into respecting
yeah,
everything. But then on a daily basis, you're able to choose the scale on where you stand. Okay, where do I go do I work too much? Do I respect that person? Do I write an apology letter? Do I dogeza? Like, how much do I bow? And you
Right.
choose it in conscience because you know the rule.
And
So I think
you know
most
who
of us who've
you
been
are.
living in Japan, you need to know the rule. Then you can choose to bend it
Discover
or not.
though. You have to figure
Yes,
out who you. In my case,
yes,
with maturity, like I didn't know who I was. I had to like
yeah,
figure out who I was to lean into my own authenticity, and I'm still
yeah,
figuring it out. But I'm closer.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's what you are actually. But also, Julie, while you were just saying, the things you said, and I was thinking, you do, in order to find the balance, you actually have to go to extremes, right?
yes,
So it's so
yes,
difficult because those extremes, in different cases, of course, for different people, they mean different things. For you, they were boredom, they were burnouts, and so on. For
yeah,
many others, probably similar things, but you have to go through them. You have to
yes.
go through those
It's not,
extremes in order to
yeah.
know that you have to find the balance. And
I
Yeah.
mean,
then,
how do you know where to stop to drink alcohol? Right? You need
yeah,
to learn. At some point,
Yeah.
we all learn,
Yeah.
right? Like how much is too much for you is not the same at the next people
Right.
next door, right?
That's so
So
true.
it's exactly the
Yeah.
same.
We're all different.
yes,
Same
we are all
and
different, yes. But there is also another point which I like about our conversation today and all the the things that you told us. It's like you, Julie, as an individual, you decided that you wanted to be here. You decided you wanted to work and live in Japan, and it worked out. At some point, you thought that it wouldn't, of course, but you still stuck to it. And
Yes.
the perseverance, first of all. Second, going through without, maybe it was not so conscious, or maybe it was going to those extremes, and eventually toning down and realizing that there must be something better, and those extremes are not the best, right? And also another thing is that I how can I put it, like, you were the only foreigner at the place, maybe you still are, as
Yes.
right at the place where you live and work, but still it makes you realize that it makes you so unique. And once again, that's the inclusion. I mean, maybe the reverse engineered inclusion, I don't know how to say it. It's still something very new to me. But because we tend to say, I mean, foreigners who live in Japan, we tend to say, yeah, there is racism, and there is so and this and that. Although we have talked about this, and there is definitely a lot of a lack of knowledge and so on. But the thing is that there is so much benefit to, or there is so much advantage to being a foreigner here.
For
Like,
me, it was.
I would just nuance that we are on the upper scale of the foreigner. Yes, Yuka, I can see your comments. See
oh
you. Thank you.
great.
Yeah. We were just continuing the conversation for
Yes,
people who are
please.
outside, but
Please,
thank
please,
you very
please.
much. Have a nice day. Thank you so much for your
Yeah.
questions.
yeah,
And
So I
I,
would just
I,
nuance what you just said because we are on the upper scale of the wanted foreigners, right? We are white. We come from European American countries, and so that's not the same. I used to be
I
with
agree.
Cote d'Ivoire boyfriend when I was in France,
hmm
and I saw how people in France treated him, um, and 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 it was a face of France that I didn't know, right?
right.
And what I saw being in couple with him for 2 years, how people treated and interacted with him, is exactly what I am living here in Japan as a white person. So everything is cool because I am on the right spectrum of what a foreigner should be. But I would assume that if you are from Nepal or if you are from Indonesia, and I have a few friends
Mhm.
from those nationality too, they do experience in Japan that is quite even
Yeah.
quite different of the one that we're experiencing. So I think it's important to always put things back into place. Yes, the gaijin card works very well when you're white. Uh, and especially if you can show that you speak Japanese and if you have a network that recognize you for you who you are. But it's racism. We didn't know it because probably in our countries we were in the majority, and so we didn't live to racism in your home country. But I know French people who are experiencing racism in France every day and think that actually racism in Japan
Oh, okay.
is less bad than in France. And I love like Arabian people or black people when they come to Japan, they feel like racism in Japan is less than in
Mhm,
France, where they do actually come from.
mhm.
So, it's always a matter of perspective. Sorry for the time. Everybody has to leave.
No, it's a great point of perspective, and yes, I think that there is so much complexity there as well.
Yes.
So yeah, and once again, yes, probably the perspectives are different and so on. So I don't want to finish on such a note, but
Okay,
anyway.
let's finish on something more fun. If you people like my energy, you can find me on Instagram and social
Mhm,
media. My name, I'm very active on TikTok recently, but also on Instagram. It's Tonari no Juri, like Tonari no Totoro, like my neighbor Totoro, but with Judy. So if you look for it, you'll find it. Usually quite fun. Instagram is in English, TikTok is in French, but I
mhm.
think nowadays there's a lot of like subtitles and like automatic translations. So
Right.
you'll be
Good.
welcome to follow my journey in Japan if you're interested.
Wonderful. Thanks for that to everybody who watched us. And well, if you're still watching us, I'm sure that you'll come back if you have left. So please connect with Julie on any of those platforms if you haven't yet, and follow her. Give her also a like, visit her website, and spread the word. So thank you very much for being with us,
Thank you
Julie.
so
Thanks
much
a
for your
lot
time.
for the time, and well, I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation in the near future. So thanks a
Yes.
lot indeed. Okay. Yes.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.